Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Angel Road Outdoors, the podcast. This week, episode 2, I sat down with Uncle Bryan Lefever, fellow Michigander, and we chatted a little bit about his brief hunting career and his adventures out west, his successes, his failures, his overall feelings about it. And at the very end, we even talked a little bit about some turkeys. And so I had a really great talk with Bryan. I've known Bryan for several years now. We met in the podcast community. And I knew he hunted. And I also knew about his out west adventures. And I knew as soon as I started this that I wanted to get him on here and pick his brain a little bit. So hope you all enjoy episode 2 coming up next. Thanks. Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Brett with Angel Road, the podcast. I am joined tonight by good friend, fellow Michigander, Uncle Bryan. How you doing, Uncle Bryan?
I'm good, sir. How are you?
Wonderful, thank you. You know, I was going to say this as well during the introduction, but I figured I would just save it for right this very second. You know, I asked you last year, and I don't know if we've really solidified this, but we can tonight. You know, I started the whole idea of Angel Road Outdoors started with a group of 3 guys, and then my brother joined, and there was 4 of us, and then one guy sort of disappeared, and so now there's 3 of us, and one guy had a baby this year in November, and so he didn't really hunt very much, and so we were really limited on content. And I was like, you know, I've always wanted to ask somebody to provide content to us, but I feel weird asking a total stranger. And since I knew you were a hunter, I sort of asked you, would you be willing to provide, record your hunts and share your content with us? And you said yes, but I don't know if you were serious.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I kind of already do it, not necessarily record my hunts, but I kind of like to film stuff. I'm one of those that I like to go back into my Google Photos and remember, oh, yeah, that's where that was at, or that's how the food plot looked at this time. And I just like to take pictures and video myself. I guess I'll just continue to do that and I'll send them to you.
Yeah, and I was trying to say, man, whatever you can record is great. There are moments in the woods, and like I said, I didn't get either one of my buck kills on film this year. I got my doe kill on film, and that's great, but just whatever you can get is good and valuable and appreciated. So yeah, man, if you're interested, then Bryan will be recording with Angel Road this year. He'll be recording his hunts, hopefully, and then we can put together his film footage for the recaps of bow season or gun season or whatever it is that Bryan gets into when it's when the season's rolling. So looking forward to that. Thanks for joining me tonight. This is episode 2, and I'm going to pick your brain a little bit about lots of things, but also specifically hunting out west.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, thanks for having me. I'd love to talk to you. All things hunting, all things guns, all things
we talk about lots
meat,
of stuff,
food, lots of stuff.
We don't just talk about hunting.
No.
So can you clarify when I met you or when we met and how we met? I think I know. I'm not 100% sure.
Yes. So as you would call back in let's go like 8 podcasts names ago.
That's fair.
When the Hot Butter podcast, you did what was, I think you called it like bombing.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's
guerrilla marketing.
Where you found absolutely, and it worked. It's why we're talking today. So you started liking a bunch of my stuff, and I was like, "Who's Hot Butter podcast?" So I started listening, and they were about hour-long episodes, and I was like, "Well, I listen to headphones at work all day. I got 8 hours," and I think I went through your entire catalog in about a week, and I just was like, I don't know who these guys are. They're local, and this is the funniest shit I've ever heard in my entire life.
So for everybody that doesn't understand what he just said, I had just started a podcast and I wanted to target it to people from Michigan. And so I would like everything, or so I would find local Michigan podcasts and I would like stalk their page and I would friend request all the people that were already liking that podcast. And I would, so then, and this is Twitter. And so on Twitter, people just sort of blindly accept requests all day long. I think I don't use Twitter anymore. And then I would sort of like engage these people. I wasn't like pushing nonsense. I was had
No. And you
legitimate
never, to be fair,
conversations.
you never said, listen to my show.
No, I
Not
would
once.
engage with people. I was trying to be organic about it, but I was also cherry picking people that were already engaged in other podcasts. And, you might call that poaching. I call that engaged content creator. And that's what I was trying to do. And so that's how Bryan and I met many, 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 many moons ago. And
Yes.
it just
And
so happens he hunts.
yeah. Uh, Not my whole life. It was something, it's weird. I love hunting. I love going out into the woods. I love being out in the woods, but I was not raised on that. That's one thing, like, I don't know. I find weird of the people that grew up walking in the woods. I mean, we camped as a kid. Um, and I always wanted to. Like, I just remember in high school, like seeing kids that went up north or hunted. Like, I didn't know anybody. Maybe one kid. I used to think, I think that kid hunts, but there wasn't a single kid in my school that I knew that went hunting, and no one in my family hunted. Uh, I really didn't even know, like, well, how do you just start? You don't just go out into the woods and sit there.
Right.
I mean, you could,
Sure.
um, but it was really something that I started way later in life.
Do you know
Um,
when?
it was probably like 2017. I
Oh,
think
so really
even
not long ago.
no, yeah.
Oh, no kid. See, I didn't even know that. That's awesome.
And I think I just went, my buddy was hunting. He was going out for bow, and I just went and sat in the tree stand with him.
Nice.
And I was like, oh yeah, yep, this is happening.
And where it was it in Michigan?
Yep, that was Michigan. Yep, just
In what
a
area of
small
the
little
mitten were you in?
that would be the I'd like to call it across from the thumb
Okay.
for the
Sure.
non-Michigan people, middle of the state, East Coast area, and a small little. His grandma and grandpa had about 18 acres.
So it was private.
Um, yeah, private land and uh, two tracks that ran through it. Um, Surrounded by on all four sides of hunters. So
Mm-hmm.
you never saw anything big. You never, a couple of does, and that was really about it. But it was, and we all know that, so we all just kind of have that experience and expectation that, yeah, we're probably just gonna be sitting in the woods today, but
Yeah.
we love it and wouldn't trade it in for anything.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny to hear that because I think a lot of us share that same sentiment. Like, I know that for whatever reason, this may be a scouting mission more so than a hunt, but sitting there and just enjoying being outside is I think what for sure draws me in today. Just that peace and quiet and that serenity and the calm, the clearing of the mind. But then also, there's the hunting aspect of it, which is inherently what we all are here for anyway. But there for sure is just it's okay if I don't see anything. I just being out here is good enough, honestly. And a lot of people, there's a lot of dudes and chicks probably that can't get to that point, and so they're the ones they get butthurt about everything. And so it would be great if everybody as a hunter could find a way to get to that point where you just are enjoying being outside. It's so tremendous for the mental well-being of everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. I make it a point to not wear headphones sitting in the stand and just listen to what's around you
Hell yeah.
and soak it up, take it in. Uh, that's really what I find enjoyable. You know, uh, there's so many different things you see, things you hear that, driving down the road or got headphones in, you miss all that.
Yeah. Do
But
you
yeah,
so it's interesting before I moved to Florida, I bow hunted and there were no smartphones. And that is not to date myself, but there were no smartphones. And if we wanted to talk to each other, it was the same group of guys. We would have walkie talkies. If we were close enough, we could walkie talkie each other. This was state land. But then when I came back to Michigan and started hunting again, my buddy's like, "Yeah, I listen to podcasts in the tree all the time." And I was actually at that moment I thought it was pretty great that you could in theory do that. Um Today I can't imagine it. I think I used to bring my headphones with me, my little earbuds. That first year I came back, maybe the second year, but I'm not sure. But I cannot even imagine listening to anything but nature while I'm out there. Like I can't even do it.
yeah, it's weird. I do. I bring them with me.
Yeah,
I'm not even gonna lie to you. I have that temptation, especially if you get out there real early
sure.
and you got an hour and a half until first light, and you're like, all right. But maybe slip it in to try to keep me awake,
Yeah. Oh, that's
so
a
I
good
don't
point. I never thought about that.
crash in the tree. But once it's go time, absolutely I can't have anything in.
Yeah. Like I was just telling somebody the other day. So my son plays hockey. Waylon plays hockey, and there's another dad on the team who's a hardcore hunter. And I was just telling him the other day, I can't even if it's freezing cold and I have a winter hat on, I won't even pull my winter hat all the way over my ears. Like I have to have some of my ear because I also listen to my music really loud. And so my hearing isn't great anyway. So I can't
Right.
afford to lose any more. I need to hear all the rustling leaves I can possibly hear.
Oh yeah,
Um,
all the buck squirrels and everything.
yeah, for sure. So I don't think we probably didn't discuss hunting right away when we first met. Um, probably probably quite a bit after we met, as a matter of fact. But I know that you hunt, and I know that you have hunted for a while, and I know that you've been on a lot of excursions. But what, in your opinion, how do you feel? You know, uh, do you hunt up where you are at right now all the time? Is that
Yeah.
only the only place you hunt, or bow hunt in
So
Michigan, or hunt in
bow
Michigan?
hunt, yes, yes, yes. As Michigan goes, yes, there is another uh a farmland that we will be losing access to this year as it's getting converted into a solar farm.
Oh,
They're putting a
jeez.
high fence around it. So my son actually got his first buck this year, his first actual time hunting. I took him out one time for a youth hunt 2 years ago. He wasn't able to go last year, um, and we never really saw anything. And it was just kind of a spur of the moment type thing. But this was an actual, we prepped, planned, um, got ready and went out, and 7:30 in the morning, he smacked a 9 point, and it was just the greatest thing ever.
He
Um,
definitely he
you know,
definitely shot a
it,
hell of a buck.
oh yeah, tears on both ends. Made a hell of a shot at, like, 150 yards, and it was just
Nice.
one of the most incredible experiences ever. But that was on private. That was on a farmland, sugar beet farm, and that's getting converted over to solar panels.
Dang.
So we're losing that access. Um, so that's really the only other spot in Michigan that I hunt. Uh, and then this the spot we were discussing before about the 18 acres.
Yeah.
That's private. That's really what I call the bow hunting spot. I mean, you can't take more than a 40-yard shot
Yeah.
with anything there. It's just so thick, and every year we try to thin it out just a little bit, but there's so many poplars that it's almost impossible to get more than a 40, 50 yard shot at most.
Man, that's crazy. Yeah, sometimes when we get down to the property, we look around and like, man, we probably need to cut some stuff down, and then inevitably there'll be a storm or something that rolls through in the summertime and takes a bunch of stuff out anyway. So we don't ever really have to get too far into it. Plus, there's the trees are so beautiful down there that I have a hard time cutting them down or even thinking about cutting them down. So we just kind of leave it alone. But yeah, I know what you're talking about. There's that thick stuff. They say that's where they're at. I don't know. I have a hard time hunting it.
Yeah, and especially when the snow, we get snow, I like to go in there in the wintertime and see where they're moving. And there's so many different runs. Uh, and every year I say I'm going to move my tree stand to this different spot, and I move it over there, and it's just they're all over the place. Not a whole lot of consistency, but I think that's just because there's so much pressure on all four sides. Um, and we had some harassment on one neighbor a couple of years ago that we really had to avoid pretty much the back, I'd say 6 acres.
Yeah,
We couldn't even go back there. It was yeah, it was unfortunate.
that's
But
brutal, man. Especially like, okay, so he just took a third of your hunting property, pretty much.
yeah, and it was, it's our property,
Yeah.
but he was doing so many, he would opening morning, he started every tractor and about 8 cars at like 6 a.m. and he had a pole barn kind of near the property line, and he had that open, and he had music blasting. Um, the next day, he came out, and I was getting down out of the tree. He walked right to the property line, looked right at me, pulled out a revolver, shot 6 times into the opposite direction, and then walked back in the house. And I was
Dude,
like, okay,
did you call the
enough said.
DNR or the cops or anything?
I didn't. And I'm kicking myself every day for not doing that because I was like, it's not my property. I
Yeah.
don't even want to get involved with it, and just let's just avoid that area. And
Man, that's tricky.
yeah,
That guy sounds
yeah,
like that's that's the kind of guy where you wind up reading a news article about you or somebody else that's out there
um,
hunting. Jesus, is
yeah.
he like an animal
And
rights
we've
activist?
never talked. I don't know. He just
Oh,
maybe thought we were too close to his property line,
good
but
lord.
again, whatever. It was bow
Holy,
hunting.
yeah, dude, that's insane. I have heard stories about people hooting and hollering and starting cars and weed whackers and shooting guns. Um, but I've only heard that from one person in my entire life, and now you are the second person in like a month and a half, maybe 2 months, to tell me that happened to them. The same guy, the same dad from Wayland's hockey team, was saying that he bought 80 acres in Holly, which is just barely north of me, and he bought it sight unseen. It just topographically looked great. He thought the family could go out there and shoot, and just kind of that would be their family property to ride four wheelers and hunt. And everybody around him had been using that property and didn't care that he bought it, and they were like fucking his shit up. And there was one lady who had, horses or whatever, and she didn't want anybody killing the deer, so she was shooting guns and honking horns, and it was like insanity. And then one other guy's property that butted up to his was cool. He would hunt, and he and her were screaming, and the lady the were screaming at each other one afternoon, he said, and they started shooting at each other. And this guy is like, he's like, I'm about to witness a murder. So he's like, I
Yeah,
gotta get done. They sold the property,
yeah,
just sold it. He's like, it's
and
not fucking
that's
worth it.
and that's what they wanted. Yeah, it's not worth it. It's not. I mean, I love hunting, but
Yeah.
it's not worth dying over.
So I'm in the process of like seriously considering leasing a property. And then I've also thought, well, if I'm going to spend money, why don't I just buy 20 acres somewhere? But I am terrified that I'm going to drop a big chunk of money on a piece of property that I think looks great to hunt, and the people that are the neighbors are psychopaths, and fuck it all up, or and then I've spent all this money, and there's no really way to find out. And then I think, well, why is it for sale? Is it for sale because somebody else tried this and it didn't work? Surely there's got to be
Yeah.
something wrong with it. So then I talk myself out of doing anything. Same thing with a lease. Give a guy a check for $1,600 or whatever, and then come to find out everybody hunts the property lines and they're all
Yeah.
assholes. Man, I'm having a hard time talking myself into it. People are
Yeah. You're
crazy.
almost better off. Yeah. You're almost better off talking to somebody with land and being like, hey, does anybody hunt this?
Yeah, for sure.
You know, and scout it that way and just say, hey, do you mind if I get permission to hunt your property and knock on a bunch of doors?
Yeah, the sight unseen. Maybe I shouldn't even go the sight unseen route. Problem is, I'm looking out of state. So, like, if I want to lease a
Mhm.
property in Ohio for this in the 2023 season, I might have to go down there and talk to every single person. I mean, it's a daunting task, but it's also, I suppose, better than finding out the hard way that it sucks.
Yeah, buying some
So,
property.
fuck.
I mean, property doesn't suck,
No, no,
but
no. The people.
property for the sake of hunting that you can't
Yeah,
sucks.
yeah, for
So,
sure. Well, I really wanted to pick your brain on how you got in. Fuck. Sorry. Um, how you got into going out west.
yeah. So, um, it was a total random thing. Some family has been going out there for a very long time, just about 30 years, and never thought I was going to get invited. It's a very, very close group of guys that go. And the rule is once you're out, you're out. But once you're in, you're asked back the next year.
Interesting.
Um, so I was like, man, if I say yes this year and I can't next year, uh, I'm gonna regret saying yes now.
That's quite a pickle.
Um, yeah, and it was at the time I was in the middle of selling a house, so the first year I was supposed to
Mm.
go, I didn't go. Um, and of course, every guy that went sent me a picture of their monster bucks, monster muleys, and just was kicking myself for not going. Um, so then, of course, I go out there and it's gorgeous, gorgeous land. Huge, huge, huge chunk of property. There's about 10 to 15 guys that go out, and all different age groups, anywhere from you know 20s to 60s, and it's just so different than Michigan. You don't see a tree. That they call it shelter belts, which the tree line surrounding a large field or anything like that, and those are about the only trees you see. The rest
Really?
of that is it's just wild plains of just miles and miles and miles. It's about 49 square miles of of private land.
Was that in just did you know that prior to?
No,
Was it
no.
so when you got there, were you like, what in the hell is this?
Yeah, so I knew roughly where we were going and done some little, Google Map scouting, some Onyx scouting, and saw, there's little chunks of private intermixed within all the, this land that, we don't have permission to hunt, but the rest of it is just wide open. And we were just cruising, left the hotel in the morning, and I looked down and we've been driving 48 minutes.
But
And I'm
you
like, we're
couldn't
still
visually
driving.
tell.
No, like I mean, we're just driving down the road, and I'm like, where are we going? We're gonna go check this spot. And then you just park the car and you get out and walk.
That's
Like, man, we've been
wild to
driving
me.
for a long time. And then you get back in the car and you go walk. And that people out there, they're just used to doing it. So
Yeah.
they'll say, hey, we'll go pick you up on that ridge line. And
They just pointed over. They just pointed to it.
yeah, and that ridge line does not. It looks far, you know, and that's a 3-4 hour walk
Damn. Okay. So
of
speaking of a
just
3 or 4 hour walk, so not knowing exactly what you were getting yourself into and not really seeing it until you got there, did anybody give you any input on the type of clothing you should bring, the type of footwear you should bring, any sort of physical conditioning that you might need to do for such a dramatic change in your behavior?
I was definitely warned about the endurance. Um, there's a lot of guys that will just sit because they physically can't do that kind of walking,
Yeah,
and they'll just maybe sit on a ridge line and say, hey, if while you're walking, maybe you'll jump something up and kind of do like an old deer push, open field deer push.
sure.
Um, but hiking boots, can't stress that enough.
But like
Um,
what level? Because you could get hiking boots at Dunham's on sale for $39.99, or you could spend $350 and up probably on some hiking boots. Like, where did you find where did you go in that spread there, and how did you feel they worked out for you?
yeah, I mean, I certainly knew going out there was going to be an investment, not only in myself but in just hunting gear
Yeah,
because you can throw on a pair of Carhartt bibs and some sweatpants and some muck boots and sit in the tree line in Michigan, and
yeah, sure.
the
Lots of
only
guys do it.
the only walking you're doing is to the car.
Yeah,
This is you got to dress warm, but you also have to be prepared to shed layers. I remember it was like 15 degrees out, and I had worn so many clothes, thinking, well, I might sit, I might walk, I might sit, and I might walk all in the same 4 hours. So I put on like every layer of clothes. I could barely zip my coat up, and they're like, "Hey, let's go walk." And I think by the end of it, I was down into a t-shirt, and it was snow on the ground, and I was like just sweating. I drank all my water. I'm like, dude, this I am not ready for this. He's
so
like, oh,
so
okay, well,
you didn't do any like physical training prior to?
oh, about 2 weeks before,
Oh,
yeah,
hell yeah, that's
yeah, that
perfect.
ought to do it because I was like,
Perfect.
yeah, this I got to get in shape, you know.
Well, the
And
reason
every
I
year I
asked
was going to
that
say,
is because I think my next episode is going to be about physical fitness and how people use it for themselves to hunt and train to hunt some of these, you know, extreme conditions. I would call what you did an extreme condition, especially comparatively. We are considered flatlanders here.
oh yeah.
You know, going on that is extreme, man. And like, how would you recommend somebody? So you did 2 weeks of training, really? And would you even call it training? Or did you just say I did a little bit more than I normally would do?
Yeah, it was probably maybe in the middle of that. I mean, I
Okay.
hit the treadmill, did walk, run, just to kind of build up my just endurance just a little bit.
Yeah,
I mean, since then, uh, I really hit the stair climber
sure.
because I feel like
Oh, yeah.
that sort of equates to real life.
Mhm.
I could probably do a bunch of squats, but when you're actually climbing, it's just a different muscle group. It's everything.
And, like, are
So
you
I would,
carrying a huge pack?
yeah. So the first year I just had a backpack, just throw everything in it that I ever needed. I said, oh, I know there's a bunch of coyotes out here, so I threw a coyote call and a speaker and water, and I know there's rivers and streams, so if I get wet, I'm gonna want some dry clothes because someone told me, always keep an extra pair of dry clothes. So I have this backpack fully loaded, 45 pounds probably of just anything I would ever need. A first aid kit, a second first aid kit, just in case the first one's not enough. And foolishly brought everything I had. And I don't think I opened that once in the entire week I was out there.
Dude, I do that here. I will
Oh,
have so
so
much
bad.
shit in my backpack, and then at the end of the season, and I've heard people say this, at the end of the season, you should go through your pack and say, "How many times did I touch this?" And if it's
Yep.
under, like, a handful of times, don't fucking take it. And there are so many things I put in my backpack that I never touched all season. It drives me crazy that I even have it.
I was so proud of myself this year. I bought a frame pack last year that I used and actually helped pack out a buddy's deer that he shot. It was total weird story. We hopped out of the truck and we were taking a piss and glassing, and nobody had a gun anywhere near him. Which, first rule of thumb, if you get out of the truck, grab your gun, grab your binos, and walk 20 steps, stop and look, because you can see for miles and miles and miles. So just grab a gun, grab your binos, and they use a whole lot. You can't drive, but you can drive on to a certain spot and then see forever and decide to walk that direction or come up with a game plan. But
Yeah.
always grab your gun. And none of us did. And we're all taking a piss. And I just hear, holy shit, he's coming right at us. And this buck is literally in rut, 400 yards out, and he's running right at the truck.
Come on.
And we're like, no, he's really running right at us. So he's like, shit, grab the fucking gun. So grabs, and we're all just in the middle of a field and makes a nice shot. And you hear it smack. It was snowing and it took off running. And so we go running after it. And there's probably 5 of us. And this thing had at least 7 shots in it.
Come
It was
on.
still running. It ran, I clocked it. It was just over 2 miles down a valley.
Unreal.
No way you couldn't get a side by side. There's nothing. There's no way you're getting down there. By the time we found it, didn't have my pack with me, so we hiked back up to the car, grabbed the pack, shed everything out of it, hiked back down, and literally corded it out, packed it out, and then hauled it back up. Oh, it was that will test you. I don't care what endurance you do.
Yeah, no matter how in shape you are, that's going to wear your ass out for sure.
Oh yeah, that was cool.
But that's cool.
But
that's the experience.
Like that. Oh yeah. But something like that, you can't necessarily prepare for.
No.
But man, am I thankful I bought a frame pack.
Oh, I believe it. I think you told me when you were looking at it or when you bought it. I think you sent me a picture one day of what you were getting or looking at.
It's a Kuiu.
Yeah, that's right.
2300.
Yep.
The carbon frame pack, and man, that thing is awesome because with nothing in it, it's super light. You can just throw, a couple of tuna packets, a bottle of water, and be good for the day. And then if you need it, I mean, you're good hauling out, 90 pounds or 100 pounds or whatever you want to throw on your back.
So do you carry game bags with you all the time?
Game bags?
Yeah. So that's something that I never
just because you just don't know.
And so you say because of what you went through there, or because you just always have?
No, the first year I didn't. But certainly I was like, you know what? Once I didn't want to have a game bag without a frame pack. I kind of felt like both of them go hand in hand.
Yeah.
And once I saw that and once I experienced that, I was like, oh, I'll never, Michigan, you throw it on a jet sled and you haul it out, and you're good to go. But this, you just don't know what situation you're going to get yourself in, because you could be walking a cornfield or you could be, taking a piss and end up running down into a valley.
Yeah.
2 miles. So
so this year I found myself in a situation where it would have been nice if I had game bags and I could have quartered a deer out myself, because I was all by myself. And I never, ever in Michigan have found myself in a position where I was concerned with being alone and having to drag a deer out. I was hunting alone. I sort of had told myself that I was going to be successful, but maybe I didn't really believe it. So I didn't bring the deer cart. I didn't bring game bags. I never even planned on quartering a deer out, and I ended up shooting a buck that I have to drag 700 yards by myself up
Ugh.
up a draw and across a field back to the truck, and I almost threw up. Like I was that out of shape and out of gas halfway through the field. But I think to myself, man, if I would have had a couple game bags, could have quartered that deer and put it on my, strapped it to my point .5, which the seat acts as a shelf, strapped everything
Mhm.
on there, and at least taken maybe a couple trips. But and the same thing when I was in Kansas this year. I kept thinking to myself, I'm here in the middle of fucking nowhere. Like I'm sharing a pin with my wife who's in town and the kids, but like if something happens to me, I'm way fucking out in the middle of nowhere. If I shoot a giant Kansas deer, I'm all by myself, which I like that sort of adventure, but I'm for sure this year buying game bags and I'm never not going to have them ever again.
Oh, yeah. And the last thing you want is, man, if I shoot that buck, it's going to be a pain to get it out.
Yeah, what am
That's
I going to
like,
do? Yeah.
yeah, you don't want that to
No.
cross your mind, you know?
And
And
every night in Kansas, I thought I'm going to get eaten by coyotes on my way in. There was
yeah,
so many fucking coyotes out there.
oh, yeah.
And thankfully, I never had any. I mean, I had one walk me in one morning, which was kind of crazy, but I never. But I thought to myself, if I shoot a big deer and I wait for, let's say it's at last light, and I have to wait, they're already yipping before last light, so
Oh,
I have to
yeah.
wait 45 minutes for it to expire. Hopefully, it's that fast. What are the chances I get there before the coyotes do? B, what do I do when I'm all alone there carving up an animal that they want? I was
Yeah,
not looking forward
they're probably
to
going to
that.
find it before you
Oh
if it
yeah,
ran, you
yeah,
know?
yep. I mean, they were running all the creeks. It was a drought. It was a drought this year, so every creek where I was at was dry. So they were just cruising those creek beds, dry creek beds, looking yipping at each other in the distance. But one
Oh, yeah.
morning I got out and they were up on the high part of the field, and I was walking the fence row, and I just turned my headlight to the right, and I caught the eyes looking at me, and it would like lay down, and I'd walk a little further, and I'd look to the right, and it would catch up to me and just look over at me. I'm like, God damn it, it's creepy. Even though I wasn't like scared of the one coyote, it's a little creepy to have it follow you in.
Oh, yeah. It's not it's not pleasant. It's not a
Yeah,
deer.
right.
If a deer was following you in,
Fine.
you'd be a little different about it.
Yeah.
How how were the coyotes out there? Were they small or like I feel like Michigan, we have huge coyotes here.
I
They're like
didn't.
not being German shepherds,
So I
but
think they were a
out west,
little bit
man, they were
smaller.
tiny. They
Yeah,
were tiny out there.
they were a little smaller, but they looked healthy. Like they were certainly not struggling to eat, I don't think.
No.
Yeah. Like so I've seen some scraggly ones around Clarkston here, but um I've also seen some real fluffy ones. I've seen some real
Yeah.
fluffy ones down in Hillsdale. But in Kansas, they looked healthy. Like they were not struggling. They didn't seem to have any mange. They looked very well fed, but they did look a little smaller, I would say. But a lot of them.
Yeah, the two I've seen, uh, and other people have, you know, shot them out there too. It's they're like pigeons, man. They're everywhere.
Yeah. Did you see
Oh,
that post recently where the couple of guys out in Kansas shot over 100 coyotes?
yes, in like 2 or 3 days or
Yeah,
something.
that pile of coyotes was insanity.
Oh my God.
Thank God.
But I
God
believe
bless
it.
them.
If you're, yeah, God bless them. Yeah, doing God's work.
That's right.
Uh, there's like Michigan, we don't have that much. I mean, there's obviously certain spots that are open land, but not, 40 square miles of open plains.
Yeah.
The coyotes they just roam free,
Yeah.
and the amount of dead deer, which they get a lot of blue tongue out there too. but I'm sure
Out
it's
west?
half blue tongue. Yeah, half
I
blue
don't know what that
tongue,
is.
half coyotes. Uh, it's something they get from, I believe, don't quote me, from drinking the water,
Hmm.
and it's like an infection that they get, and it's like the leading cause of deer death out there.
Really? And it's from the
Yeah,
water, huh?
that's what I
Like a
heard.
bacterial infection from the water.
Yeah,
Huh.
I've done zero research,
I was just
but
listening to a podcast when I was working today, and the guy was saying that Michigan is one of the only states to have bovine the deer to have bovine tuberculosis. If not the only,
hmm,
one of the only states to have that, which is weird. You always hear about CWD and EHD, but I sort of remember when I was not living here, the guys were talking about TB. I've never seen it. I wouldn't even know what to look for. But did you find any so back to out west?
yeah,
You mentioned your buddy having good luck on one the piss deer where you guys were taking a squirt and you shoot one. What about
this
you?
deer.
Did you have any luck when you were out there?
Yes. So the first year I went out there, uh, we were pretty early, not quite rut.
What time were you
And
out there? Do you know? Do you remember?
yeah, we usually get out there about November 10th.
Okay.
So we miss, in Michigan, November 15th is opening day here.
Yeah.
Typically we're gone, either the 10th, 12th, somewhere around that time. Um, and usually that rut out there starts right about the 15th.
Okay.
Um, and you see some deer, but everybody's telling you, that's a first day buck or
Really?
last day buck, and
I hate that.
you'll
That's
see
dumb shit. It's fucking
you'll see
ridiculous.
you'll see a great 10 point. They're like, that's not the ones though.
I
Big
can't even
boys aren't out yet.
imagine.
Man, man. Yeah, I'll tell you a quick story this year. So there's a ton of mule deer out there,
I bet.
and we were driving to a spot to go sit where we knew was a pretty good spot. And we're driving down the road and just crest right on top of this hill. It was a goddamn moose. This thing was so big. And I was like, is that a muley? And I was driving and I pulled over to the side of the road and I stopped, rolled down the window, got my binos out, and I was like, oh, I mean, just like the biggest thing I've ever seen. Would have been a world class muley, and it
Oh
was a Wente.
man.
This thing was enormous. Like, didn't even look real.
And was
And
this
it was like 100 yards.
come on. Private land? Of course.
Yep. Just
Of course.
staring at
He
me.
knows it.
Yep. And another car was passing us on the road and then pulled right behind me. And I don't know if it was someone associated to the private land or if it was just another person that said, why is this car pulled over to the side
Yeah.
of the road? And just kind of took off. But
Holy
it was
shit.
like, now that I've been told the big boys are out there, but now that I'm seeing it, I'm like, oh, I gotcha.
Man.
So uh, I've been out there 3 years. My first year was actually I got my first buck out there, which
Awesome.
was a pretty awesome experience
Ever.
considering
First buck
I'm
ever.
30, first buck ever,
Sweet.
and I'm 35. So that was 3 years ago. Um, that was a pretty just awesome experience. Again, we pulled over to the side of the road. We were glassing. We saw some probably 800 yards out, put together a game plan, had to cross a river and found some logs, picked them up, laid them down and to be able to cross the river and basically get to the spot where we could set up a game plan. We had a guy, we had a guide with us, and he kind of went one way, I kind of went another, and I was like, oh man, he's gone, but definitely worth coming back, in the morning. We are like, oh, all right. Threw the rifle over the shoulder, and 15 yards in front of me, he jumps up.
Come on.
Nope.
That close?
Oh yeah, and just took off running, and I took a shot, hit him real good, and he turned back. When I think I kind of hit him, he was running away, so I still got shoulder, and then he turned and I hit him broadside and found him 70 yards from there, and it was just so quick, but there's so many hills and dips and valleys and everything that, man, he was literally 15 yards from me.
That is so crazy. And so how long of a stalk, like distance wise, was it until he was suddenly 15 yards in front of you? Would you say?
We were probably about 800 yards
Okay, so
out.
you had an 800-yard stalk on this buck that you
That I didn't know where he was.
yeah, and you
Once
didn't
we
know where it
started
was.
walking, the way that we started the stalk, as soon as we started, we were out of sight,
Yeah.
basically knowing that we had to go down into this river bottom, cross it, walk the river bottom to come up into another area. And when we got up, he was gone.
So when
He
you
had a
do
doe with
something
him.
like that, and forgive me because I really don't know, are you following like an onyx when you go, sort of around the farm to get to the barn to where you're headed? Like, or are you just following the terrain in the general direction that you're going?
Following the terrain, uh, always checking Onyx before because
Yeah,
I don't know where the hell I am.
sure.
Or am I going the complete wrong direction, or does that river then cross and I'm going to have to cross
Oh,
it
yeah.
again? Kind of coming up with a map of, hey, we're going to go this way, and just follow that terrain. There's a lot of cattle out there, so there's a lot of cattle paths.
Mm-hmm.
The deer tend to use that too. You'll see the coyotes will follow that path.
Yeah,
So that's tend to what I stick to because it's flat, it's beaten down, and if it's good for them to
yeah,
walk on, it's typically good for me to walk on.
sure.
So you're not fighting the terrain. It's pretty flat walking. It's actually pretty quiet versus walking over sticks and twigs and everything else. Um,
Yeah,
so pretty much just kind of follow a general path and say, hey, if I were a deer, I'd be going this way too. And
nice.
man, we just lost complete sight of them. Um, and literally, we're like, all right, let's turn around and head back. And he just jumped up.
That's so
So crazy.
awesome. So awesome. No
The
matter how, even though, it's so, like you said, it's so fast. And so you lose a little bit of that anticipation, that rush, that thrill of anticipation is gone because of how quick
oh,
all it
it's
happens. However, it's still a great story. You know
oh
what I mean?
yeah,
So, okay. So you
it's
stalk 800 yards on this buck. Go ahead. Sorry.
no. I'm just saying, like in Michigan, typically you're seeing them walk in, or you're waiting to see something.
Yeah.
This you're walking, and your mind is every step you take. Should I
Mm-hmm.
go this way? Should I go that way? Do I want to expose myself to look over here? It it's just so vastly different than
Yeah.
sitting in a tree, in a tree stand.
Do you find yourself a little bored when you come home?
No,
Oh, that's good.
no, yeah. I mean, I should because it's so different, but it's almost like it's calming. This is like so high stress,
Interesting.
you know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because you're
it's
working the whole
sometimes
time.
it might.
Yeah.
Yeah, yep.
Can't ever just relax. I guess that
No,
makes sense.
the uh the second buck I got, I think, is my favorite because on the way out there, we got a picture from somebody out there of, hey, saw this really awesome buck, and he's got three pictures of this buck,
Like
and
from his phone?
yep, from his phone that he had seen,
Okay.
and he was just kind of doing some pre-scouting before we got out there. So he's got these pictures, and I was like, man, that's a really cool looking 8 point. He's decently past the ears, but he's tall,
Yeah.
real tall. And I was like, man, that's awesome, and didn't really think too much of it. Ended up going to that spot like 3 days later into the hunt, and he just poked his head right out into this field, literally. And I was like, "Oh my god, that's that buck!" And it was right getting close to the last light,
Oh, no kidding.
and kind of had to like walk my. And he walked out of the shelter belt, so I kind of had to like sneak through the shelter belt and set up a spot and dropped him. And pretty, I mean, I just feel like Michigan deer drop, but every buck I've seen out there, you got to hit them 2 or 3 times, and
No
it doesn't
kidding.
matter.
And what
Doesn't
are
matter
you
if you're.
using?
I'm I'm using a 6.5 Creedmoor.
Really?
I like it. It's a great. I, if I'm going to use a gun or a round, I want to. It's got to serve more than one purpose for me.
Sure.
So that's why I choose the 6.5. I'm probably going to get a 300 Win Mag just because of what I've seen out there. But saw a buck this year that got hit 3 times with a 300 Win Mag and kept running.
Unreal.
All heart and lungs. Just kept going.
That's
They just
wild.
don't stop.
Unbelievable. So
So,
back up a little bit. So the second buck you shot out there, what time of year was it? So you said it's always around the same time of the year. Was it exact like still that second week in November?
yep, yep. Um,
Do you think you'll always go around
right.
that time?
Yeah, I would say so. It does kind of suck because I lose that opening day of Michigan.
Yeah,
Um, but I know what I'm going to see in Michigan during rifle season.
sure.
I mean, it's like the goddamn 4th of July up north on opening day.
Yeah,
People coming back with dogs on the roof. So
yeah.
I know I'm gonna have a better chance out there, and I'm just gonna put in the work of bow season here.
So that is an interesting theory, and it's something that I've never talked about with the other guys that I hunt with. So I have asked Head and my brother if they want to go to Kansas this year. And, the consensus from them is they don't want to miss opening day of gun here in Michigan. And I personally don't care about the opening day of gun in Michigan. I, and that this is nothing against gun hunting. I shot my biggest buck ever this year with a gun. I would I would personally never gun hunt ever again for the rest of my life and only bow hunt. I don't know why. It's just how I feel. I don't care. So that opening day of gun doesn't really mean anything to me. It's typically, I have had more success with my bow the day before gun season than I ever have with
Yep.
gun, ever.
Yeah, it's the calm before the storm.
Yeah, exactly. And so I would just as soon, like you said, I would rather go out of town and do an out of state hunt in the rut in a big buck state every year than I
Yep.
would stay here just for opening day gun. I just don't. It doesn't do anything for me. But I get it. Some people love it.
Yeah, some people, it's a family tradition. It's
Yeah.
a almost religious experience for some people here.
Yeah.
I'm totally not knocking it.
No,
Again, that
not at
is
all.
like my thing. And, you know, I just know I can hunt October 1st,
Yep.
and I'm going to take advantage of
Yeah.
all of that. And best luck to everybody here. But
Yeah.
um, I'm going out there.
Yep. And I would happily go out of state to another big buck state every year if I can, if I'm able to afford it every year. Having seen the other side, like I'm not bragging. I'm just saying I hunted in Illinois this year and I hunted in Kansas this year and I hunted in Michigan this year. And I know that those two adventures, that Kansas adventure, even though I wasn't successful, and the Illinois adventure, even though I was successful on a fluke, I still, that adventure to me is more attractive than opening day of gun here. And maybe it won't always be that way, but for right now, as long as I'm able to physically go and do those out of state hunts, that my body will let me, and if I'm financially able to do it, I would love to continue to do that.
Well, that's two major points right there too. Is body being able to physically do that and cost.
Yeah,
Obviously, an out of state hunt is costly. We've discussed that.
yeah,
It's expensive.
yep.
A $40 combo tag in Michigan, it is hard to pass up, man.
Hell yeah, it is.
You know,
And 10 no
and
tags.
right, yeah, freezer's full, man.
Oh
You
yeah,
know,
for sure.
and I do. I don't know about you, but I tag for whatever it's worth when I process all my own meat and I write the state, the year, and little details about it.
Oh, interesting. That's a cool idea.
So just when I freeze it, so if I'm
Yeah,
pulling burger out of the freezer, it's Michigan Youth Logan 2022.
that's awesome. That's a good idea.
And that
So
was so that way I know, hey, this is my son's deer from youth season. This was his buck.
I that's cool because I tried when Waylon shot his last year. I tried to be like, "Hey man, thanks for providing dinner for us tonight."
Yep.
To
That's
try
it.
and get him and encourage him a little bit excited about what he was able to do for us. Um, so I bought this year. I bought my first meat grinder. So from now on, I'm going to start processing my own deer. If I'm going to go spend the money out of state, I'm gonna spend my money. I'm gonna save my money for processing deer in state as much as possible because it
Yeah.
ain't cheap no mo.
No. And that is certainly something since I started hunting, so many years ago. Uh
So many,
I've always processed myself.
so manly of
And
you.
even the concept of turning it into somebody else never really crossed my mind. Uh, I just sort of knew, oh, okay, well, I'm going to skin it out and we're going to cut it up. And again, as you buy more toys and you hunt more, you buy more pieces of equipment. I bought my own grinder, but I used somebody's smoker. I bought my own stuffer, but I used their smoker again, and then I bought a smoker this year. So I've added pieces to it, and now I do it all. And I'm weird that I almost like giving it away more than I actually like to eat it. It's just one of those, like, it's the providing
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Oh
My
yeah.
son, he really didn't eat venison at all. He would try it here and there, the jerky or something, but he wouldn't eat burger. And now he's like, I remember, and I remember telling him when I was processing it, when I was cutting it up, and I was putting it in the vacuum sealer bags. Hey, we're going to eat this one day, and you're going to say, I remember that, and I know where I was, and I remember that experience, and it's something that I think is important to hunting. I mean, it's cool having a buck on the wall, but it's also cool eating and providing for your family. I think that's, if not as important, if not more important.
Man, you nailed that. I Not only is it important to hunting, it's important to just the future generations of human beings. Being able to physically provide or physically create or physically do like that whole generation of people that did everything with their own hands is is gone. And so there's the
Yeah.
digital generation and the electronic generations, which are your and my kids are in, but offering them an opportunity to do things with their hands again and provide food for their family and have those, yes, on top of the memories, but learning those invaluable skills of being able to provide and do things on your own and not relying on the government for everything is just astronomically invaluable. So
I mean, I
kudos to
think
you for
one
that.
thing. Well, I think one thing from COVID was like, man, we need to grow a garden,
Oh yeah,
and
I
that
saw
was
those
really
pictures.
where that started. And the thought of me 10 years ago saying, I'm going to cook dinner tonight, and every piece of food on this plate. I was I said I just want one time a year I want to experience that, even if it's somebody else's garden and somebody else's meat. Like, wouldn't that be cool? And now that's like that's not out of the question, you know. Like, okay, we're gonna cook steak and we're gonna have a couple different vegetables, and it's all stuff that we've worked all year on and
It's the pinnacle.
provided.
Yeah. That is the pinnacle of manliness. It's the pinnacle of personal excellence. There's nobody can take that from you. Once you have those skills of to be self-sufficient, that cannot be taken from you ever. And that's such a valuable thing. And the fact that you're doing it and you're instilling it in your kid is so awesome. And we need more people to be doing that. It's really wonderful.
It's a there's not a lot of people anymore. You know, everyone's got their hand out, and
Yeah.
that just drives me fucking nuts.
Yep. That's the truth. That's the truth. Well, I love hearing about your hunting stories. And I love the fact that you're going to provide content with Angel Road this year. I offered to send you some hats, but you don't like our hats. Like what? I can't remember. What did you say is wrong?
Uh,
What's wrong with the hat?
well, I have a pea-size head, and I've tried putting your hats on before, and they are. It's like a goddamn. Uh,
Like a grandpa hat.
it's no, it's more Abe Lincoln than anything. It's a 5 bucket on my head. It just doesn't fit, man. So it's hanging on the wall.
All right.
It's hanging up. I'm showing love. I just not on my
And
face.
then Adam and I have ginormous heads.
Yeah,
I think
you got
Adam is
an.
like a 9.
I'm like the. Oh, I'm a 6 and 7/8.
He's not really. He's an 8.
Oh,
6 and
God,
7
no.
eighths.
I'm not even a 7.
Yeah, Adam's an 8. I'm 7 and 5/8. And then the other guy in the group, his nickname is Head
Right.
because his head has been the same size his entire life from when he was a baby till now. So we've all
No,
got giant
not me.
heads, but except for Uncle Brian. So we'll have to get you a beanie. I know my kids are asking for beanies and hoodies and everything, so I'll
Stickers and
send them to you.
T-shirts. That works for me.
Hell yeah, hell yeah. Well, I love hearing from you. It was great to talk with you and catch up and hear your stories, and I can't wait to do this again.
Yeah,
If there's
let's do it
anything,
again.
if there's anything you want to talk about in the future, you just let me know, and we'll work out the topic, and we'll figure out when to do this. But I appreciate you taking your time tonight, and I'll have this edited and out tonight.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, sounds great.
Cool, man.
Certainly am looking forward to putting out some content
Hell yeah.
and sharing it with you and whoever else is viewing it. So I'm really looking forward to it. I know turkey season's coming up. It's one thing I got to get a turkey this year.
Me too. I've turkey hunted 2 years in a row
Got
with
to.
no luck.
Ugh,
Are you a
it's
slate call, box call? Are you a diaphragm guy?
I was a mouth diaphragm for the first few years, and I got so tuckered out, and especially after COVID, and I have asthma. I couldn't do it. So
Interesting.
I bought a slate call
Mm-hmm.
last year, and that it was a game changer. I actually was getting some responses for the first time, but no luck.
Yeah. So
Uh,
did you apply for your tag already?
yeah, yep,
So I did too. I don't know if Adam did, but I always notice it's almost like the Michigan DNR sends all the turkeys a notification right before the first this because they broke up the seasons now, and
yep,
so they kept like the property in Clarkson that I can hunt has like 50 turkeys on it every spring, and they were always gone the second the season that first season opened up for me. And so last year I got the earlier season, and we had a couple encounters with Waylon out there, and we just kind of got turned around in the tent and didn't work out. And then I didn't have the right arrow set up, and my arrows were not tuned right, and then I missed one. And so this year again, they're all already out there. Like I see them every day when I drive by. I've got them on camera. The turkeys are already here at the property, like clockwork. So I applied for that early season again. So hopefully, do you have you ever hunted turkey from a tree?
Yes.
So I said that last year, and someone thought I was crazy. I feel like I get busted in the
Um,
tent every time.
yeah, I didn't like the tent. I didn't own a shotgun when I first started hunting, so I had a bow,
Hmm.
and man, I called in this turkey who came from behind me, and he was maybe a yard, maybe two from the ladder. And I wasn't an experienced bow hunter. I'm certainly not an experienced bow hunter now. And took a shot, and he was all puffed up and went right through the feathers, never hit me.
Oh, brutal.
And
Adam did that
he
last year.
ran about 80 yards, and he stood there for about an hour and a half. And I called, he called back. I called, he called back, and it was like an hour and a half. And I remember the property I was hunting on different than I was before. The guy texted me and he's like, "Are you making love to it? Like, what are you doing?" He's like, "Shoot it already." I was like, "I did." I was like, maybe I hit meat and I just wounded it.
Oh,
And, but I went and I still have the arrow. It's got all the little feathers on it.
that's
And
funny.
just, nope.
Yeah, Adam did that too. It was in my parents' backyard. It was coming in every afternoon. So he snuck around the back of the garage and he shot. He was all strutted up and he took that shot and had it on camera and he swore he hit the turkey because of the way it flipped through the air. And I came down there and we searched all the woods behind my parents' house. No turkey. Adam ended up getting two ticks on him. And then
Oh,
I'm like, we should
yep.
have probably looked at the film. I looked back at the film and you can see it went right through his breast feathers. And then I could see the arrow go out into the pond.
Oh,
And I was like, you never even hit it. We just spent an hour and a half looking for a turkey that's totally alive. So we'll see what happens this year, but I'm pretty excited. Waylon likes to turkey hunt, but he also gets really pissed off was because we never shoot any turkeys.
well, I think from everything that I've watched, YouTube and other just anything turkey related, is you're not going to get a whole lot of luck sitting still.
Interesting.
You're, I mean, I haven't got one yet, so don't listen to me. But I certainly am hearing from other people that are successful, and they're walking property and they're calling, and then
Line
they
gun.
get a game plan and go towards that.
Interesting.
But like deer where you're sitting in one spot, it's sort of the opposite of what you would think.
So I last year
So I've been told.
I
I
didn't
don't
know we
know.
were going to turkey talk tonight. I like it. So last year I went down to Hillsdale and I knew they were roosting in the swamp. And so I walked out and I laid down in some fallen logs and they were still in the roost right above me.
Mm,
And I think that was actually the problem because they were too close. And because they were, I mean, they came out of the roost, but they would not come anywhere near me. And I'm like, this has got to work, right? They're right up above me. Why would they not come straight down? I'm calling, they're responding. This is working
right.
perfectly. They came, I mean, I could see them up there, but when I went out in the dark, whatever, I didn't know. And so they just like I feel like I'm always that fucking close.
Yeah.
And it just
Do you have decoys?
I do, but they're cheap inflatable ones, which they were. I mean,
Mm,
they get their
yeah.
attention, but they're cheap.
I I don't have decoys. And I sort of feel like the reason I haven't been successful is decoys, but probably not. I don't know.
The only reason I like the decoy is like just don't look at me in the tent when I'm fucking around in here. Just look at this
Yeah,
decoy turkey, please. Or while Waylon's doing something in there, like just to take their attention. Same thing with a deer decoy. Like just take the attention off of me for a minute
right.
so I can draw back in these, and that's another thing in Kansas. I didn't bring a decoy and I think I should have.
Hmm.
Oh well.
I, How do you transport that?
So that it breaks down like the legs and the head and the ears and the antlers all go inside the body cavity of the plastic decoy. But then I just put I took an old like a cell camera, like a trail camera strap, ran it through there and just hung it over my shoulder
Hmm.
and then carry it out. And that's one more fucking thing. I'm already fucking 40 pounds heavy walking out in there sweating. I'm
Yeah.
overweight by about 20 pounds.
Let's
One
talk
more thing.
e-bikes one day.
I got one in my saved list that I look at every couple days.
Oh, in your safe list.
Yeah, I don't have one. I ordered it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. God, I want one.
I do too, but then I talk myself. I'm like, do I need one?
No.
No, I don't need
No.
one, but I want one.
Yep. Absolutely.
Ay, ay, ay. One more thing, man.
I know it.
Just one more thing. That should be the title of this podcast. One more thing with Uncle
One more
Bryan.
thing.
One more thing with
Game
Uncle Bryan.
bags.
Game bags. All right, homie. Well, we'll catch up soon. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you. Looking forward to doing it again.
All right, man.
Hugs and kisses.